How you doing, guys? I'm Hexic, this is Waypoint Nominal, and we're going to do a different type of video today, talking about game theory and the direction that game development is heading. Everybody knows that survival games have been extremely popular in the past few years, particularly in the indie scene. The motivation for the player is very clear, the primal need to survive, and the gameplay loop is very simple. You need supplies, you find supplies, rinse, lather, and repeat. But where's this all heading? I recently played a fascinating early alpha game called Eden Star. In its most basic form, it is a survival game. You need to satisfy hunger and thirst. You use crafting to make necessities and upgrades. You build a base that allows you to more easily facilitate these needs. However, every night, waves of enemies come out of hives around you on the map and attack your base. You can create automated turrets and other defenses. This focus is interesting because it starts to blur the line between a survival game and a Horde Mode game. To take a quick step back, the gameplay loop for a Horde Mode game is simple. Enemies attack in waves. They know either your location or the location of an objective that you are defending. Each wave you mount a defense, discover weaknesses or strengths of the strategy you used, and you adapt the lessons you learned in the later waves. Now, to compare it to the gameplay loop for a survival game, you gather resources, discover the reasons for any setbacks, like lost supplies, why your base got destroyed, or why you died, and you adapt these lessons for later on. At first glance, these two game types seem very similar. Some games of each type have incorporated a few elements from the other type, but until now they've been largely distinct experiences. This is because modern gaming, at its most basic level, is about creating experiences for the player. Game developers either set a tone for the gameplay or create situations where the player must react to what is happening. Think about it this way. In advertising, the golden rule is always, know your target audience. For survival games, we as gamers go into the experience intending to overcome obstacles, to survive against the odds. The most successful iterations of the genre usually strive to make the player feel like the world is against them, constantly reminding them that death or significant setbacks are a persistent possibility. Generally speaking, when you die in a Horde Mode game, either the game ends and you have to start over on the first wave again, or you have to go back a certain number of waves and fight your way back to where you died. Because of this, the focus of Horde Mode games is actually on progression. The threat of death and the struggle to survive are there, but that isn't the tone of the game. The emphasis is on which wave the player made it to and figuring out ways to get past it. But what if a Horde Mode game adequately encapsulated that survival feeling and made the player feel like they were surviving against the odds? This discussion really becomes interesting when we look at the endgame experience for these two genres. With survival, eventually gameplay habits provide probable survival in the vast majority of situations, and backup supplies are collected to minimize penalties of death or setbacks. But once the player has spent enough time in this situation, then the player must come to the conclusion that there is no way to become 100% safe, because any game where you are 100% safe would get boring very quickly. The entire game becomes about minimizing risk, and once that risk is minimized to a certain point, challenges become trivial, and gameplay becomes stale. It is for this reason that survival as a genre is an unsustainable model on a long enough timeline. Horde Mode games don't suffer from this shortcoming. The endgame experience is about shattering expectations in gradual increments to continually give the player a feeling of progression. You remember that boss creature you faced 5 waves ago that was 3 stories tall and shot laser beams out of its eyes? Now kill 10 of them simultaneously. As long as the game has ways to mix up the gameplay periodically so that the player has to adapt, it can keep the game from getting stale, and conceptually give an infinite feeling of progression. Mobile games and procedural games have been using different implementations of this for a while. They use formulas to generate new challenges or enemies for the player so that gameplay content can last significantly longer than conventional game development teams could manually create. A proper game that is a hybrid of these two genres wouldn't necessarily need to have waves of enemies, a hunger or thirst system, or even base building. We should think about this more as a possible general direction rather than a clear-cut guide for future games to follow. This is only one possible path forward to enhance the longevity and appeal of survival games. Do you think that this is the direction that the development of modern survival games should be heading? What other direction should we be heading? I look forward to hearing from you guys in the comments down below. As always, I'm Hexic, this is Waypoint Nominal, and I'll see you guys in the next one.